So today we're going to do something a little bit different, and we're going to be looking at what is in the news today, because there's something that I've seen a lot with the Jeffrey Epstein files is that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and people end up getting the wrong idea of what's going on. And something that I've been seeing in the news a lot lately is Trump passed something where it's changing the Endangered Species Act. Now 3 million acres of Utah land is now up for grab in order to I think it was mining. So now I was reading that apparently no longer does it apply. Doesn't mean harming includes habitat destruction. Now the reason why I was kind of hesitant to believe this is because when I was going to school, they were telling us how even when we do set lands aside and we do allow for parks to exist, that sometimes that has good intentions. You can have all the laws, all the protected land in the world. It doesn't always mean anything if you're not allocating the resources, or if the people don't really care to actually make it worthwhile to begin with. So I was wondering if this was something similar, where it's maybe it's just the way that people are interpreting it, or if they're trying to if it's Trump derangement syndrome or what. So I wanted to read what was actually passed. So this is what it says. This is from April 21st, 2026. It says Statement of Administration Policy. HR, which I believe means House Resolution 1897, Endangered Species Act Amendment Act. The administration supports passage of H.R. 1897, the Endangered Species Act, Endangered Species Act Amendments Act. The bill would increase transparency for fish, wildlife, plant, and conservation efforts, encourage partnerships between the federal government and private landowners to advance endangered species conservation and recovery. I have a feeling that's based on what I was reading. That's not it. The Endangered Species Act is the nation's primary law for protecting fish, wildlife, plants at risk for extinction. Okay. The Trump has taken bold actions to improve ESA implementation, including ensuring prompt consultation under ESA regulations to support the nation's energy supply. Yeah, so that's what I was mainly reading, is that this has to do mainly with they want to open up our energy reserves, and it's considered like an energy emergency. And I'm wondering if that has something to do with the fact that they're trying to approve all these data centers, because we have other ways of getting energy. We don't need all this extra energy unless we're planning on increasing our energy usage in the next few years. And what's interesting is the first Trump administration, CO2 emissions overall actually went down. So I find this interesting that we are now looking at having an energy emergency. So anyways, continuing. The administration had also proposed to consolidate the National Marine Fisheries Service, ESA, and Marine Mammal Protection Act implementation responsibilities into the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which will create a single program at scale to both accelerate recovery and consistently implement statutory responsibilities. H.R. 1897 would further promote endangered species conservation on private lands, including reforming the process for voluntary conservation agreements. The bill would also require transparency from the FWS for endangered species determinations and minimize regulatory overreach. The administration is committed to addressing challenges facing endangered species while alleviating unnecessary regulations placed on the American people. If this bill were presented to the president in its current form, his advisors recommend that he sign it into law. Now, this is from the Executive Office of the President, Office of Management and Budget, Washington, D.C., 20503. So once again, I want to make this clear. When I was in school, we were talking about how there were parks that had been set aside as protected, but those were being illegally logged. And then there were other places in the world where there was regulated logging, but they wouldn't log the whole piece of land. There was like laws around what you were allowed to do with the land. And what they found is like if you are allowed to like have some sort of interaction with wildlife instead of being cut off completely, like sometimes that is the better outcome. A good example is like there was one African country that allowed you to hunt their elephants, and another African country that didn't allow you to hunt their elephants. And oddly enough, the one that allowed you to hunt their elephants actually was more successful in increasing their elephant populations. And I think that has something to do with them allowing people to come in and hunt the more sickly elephants. It definitely is a case-by-case basis. And then I don't know if those 3 million acres were like federally protected initially or not, or if they were just federal lands and the only reason why they hadn't been like opened up is because like the federal government hadn't sold them or anything. Like, I'm wondering what this whole thing is about, because things like this just don't just happen in a vacuum. So I just wanted to read this a little bit. So I have the History of Endangered Species Act Principal Amendments. I have all the amendments. So the previous amendment in 2004 said, in accordance with the National Defense Authorization Act, Public Law number 108-136, Congress enacted an associate amendment to Endangered Species Act, Section 4A3 exempted the Department of Defense from critical habitat designations so long as that's an alarm that doesn't mean anything. The Section 4A3 exempted the Department of Defense from critical habitat designations so long as an integrated natural resources management plan prepared under Section 101 of the Sykes Act, 16 U.S.C. 678, and acceptable to the Secretary of the Interior is in place. I have a problem with my screen right around here that no one can see, just me, because it's a screen problem, not a recording problem. So this is so it sounds like what he is doing is he is removing the 2004 amendment to have these critical habitat designations. That could be the case. It's still very vaguely worded, as many things in politics are, so maybe this is as bad as they're making it out to be. So, what I just read was from fws.gov, so let's take a look at the DOI.gov, the U.S. Department of the Interior. Washington. Today, the Department of the Interior's U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the service announces additional necessary revisions regulations under the Endangered Species Act. These actions advanced President Donald J. Trump's directive to strengthen American energy independence, improve regulatory predictability, and ensure federal actions align with the best reading of the law. We are following the original intent of the law, looking at the facts on the ground and listening to local voices when making decisions under the Endangered Species Act, said Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum. Multi-generational families on America's working lands care deeply about wildlife, clean air, clean water, and healthy habitat. Along with the states, they are the front lines in making recovery possible for endangered species. Using gold standard science and common sense, that's something that... You see, that's something that's kind of like more vague wording. By the way, this comes out today, on the 17th. This whole thing that I'm reading right now, all the other stuff was older stuff. This is like information today from the government's website, U.S. Department of the Interior. So another reason is like, I don't want people to get fear-mongered into thinking that this is super, super bad, but also, if it is super, super bad, I want to know exactly what's going on. Because it's like, I think when people say 3 million acres, I think some people might get in their head that it's all going to be destroyed at once, when that's not the case. It could be slowly chipped away at, but I don't think the entirety of the 3 million acres is going to be like destroyed all at once. Maybe, potentially. Another thing is, let's say it is really bad. I care about wildlife. I'm upset that I can't see the dodo anymore, and then all these animals that are endangered in Utah, now they're at risk. And then you got, I was seeing, like, how the salmon in the stream were at risk, and it's like, well, we have a problem in this country where we're using up a lot of water. We don't have water in our rivers at the same capacity that we used to, depending on which river you're talking about. And so certain species of fish have gone extinct because there wasn't enough water being flowing into the reservoirs. Anyways, using gold standard science and common sense, the service is returning to the best implementation of the Endangered Species Act that was successfully established under the Trump administration. Specifically, the service has finalized the following changes to its regulations that administer sections 4D and 4B2 of the Endangered Species Act. Friend Species Protection, Section 4D, eliminates burdensome blanket rule option under Section 4D of the Endangered Species Act for threatened species created in the final months of the Biden administration. The blanket rule created a default for all threatened species that incorrectly treated them as endangered, unless an exception was made with the 4D rule. Moving forward, threatened species will be appropriately treated as threatened and endangered, and the service may tailor a customized 4D rule to better suit each species. Critical habitat exclusion, Section 4B2, revises the critical habitat designation process to follow along and consider the economic, national security, and other relevant impacts following the designation of any particular area as critical habitat. The revision also allows an area to be excluded from a critical habitat designation that exclusion will not cause the extinction of the species. So, if they think that it sounds like if they think that developing the habitat would cause the extinction of the species, they cannot actually develop it. So that's what I'm taking away from this. Like, the way the media is making it sound like, yeah, this is still bad, but it may not be as bad as they're making it out to be, because when I went to the rainforest, I got to go study abroad in the rainforest in Peru. Something that they did with Manu National Park is you have the actual park, and then on the outskirts of the park you have what's called a buffer zone. And in the buffer zone, they let people kind of just live their normal lives. They don't buy up large plots of land, and so they're kind of like incentivized to actually maintain the land, unlike a multi-billion-dollar corporation which could just come in, buy up, millions of acres of land for like pennies on the dollar that, because they're getting it in bulk. I'm guessing that's how it works. That part, at least with buying up the land. But point is, billion-dollar companies can come in, buy up huge tracts of land because they have the money for it. And because they have the money for it, they can just bulldoze mines, deforest the whole thing, and they don't have to worry about the aftermath. Whereas when you sell these lots of land to people who are invested in the long-term health of the environment that they're living in, they're only going to cut down a few trees at a time. They're not going to destroy the entirety of the environment because their kids live there. So that's more or less the idea of a buffer zone. So some scientists are considering whether or not we should have this continuous idea of full-on exclusion from wildlife, because it has been working too successfully in recent decades. So what we're trying to do now in more recent times is we're trying to include wildlife in our day-to-day activities. India is a great example of this, where they allow the lions to hang out in their local community, and the lions kind of keep away animals that will graze on their crops, so they don't have to worry about scaring away the animals that will graze on their crops. The lions will do it for them. And I think there's another place in India that does something similar, but with leopards. But it's still one of those things where it's I'm 100% positive that there are scientists with very differing opinions on this. And I don't think all 3 million acres will be destroyed. Now the question is, will they be destroyed to the point? What property, what land is destroyed? To what extent will it be irreparably destroyed? Like, we won't be able to get it back to its original state within our lifetime. And that's the question I kind of have with this idea of mining. Are they going to do the mining? Are they going to do the drilling safely in a way where it's like when they're finally done, like the land can return to its original form? That's my main question. Because it sounds like they cannot destroy habitat to the point where a species goes extinct entirely. And even that is still pretty vaguely worded, but the way I do think the media was fear-mongering. Like, I'm not saying that this isn't, I'm not saying this is a good thing, but I think the media was fear-mongering because they were making it seem like Trump was removing all protections from habitat. It sounds like that is not entirely the case. It sounds like they skipped over some pretty major details here. Okay, so for too long, the Endangered Species Act has weaponized to stop almost any new project in America, driving up costs for families, weakening our competitiveness, and undermining our national security, continues Security Burgum. At the same time, results have fallen short. Nearly 97% of species ever placed on the list remain there today. Success should be measured by species recovery and delisting, not by adding more species to the list. These common sense reforms will enhance transparency, clarity, predictability, and efficiency in administrating the Endangered Species Act while remaining consistent with the statute's purposes. President Trump believes the people's closest to the challenges are closest to the solutions, concluded Burgum. His trust in American people is the foundation of those reforms, which will lower costs for Americans and lead to more species successfully coming off the endangered list. Two things all Americans can celebrate. So they're making it sound like by allowing us to, I don't know, it sounds almost like pressuring us into coming up with a solution because our more recent measures weren't working. The regulatory revisions also take into account site-specific characteristics in order to relieve the financial burdens that are imposed upon citizens' daily lives around the nation as a result of one-size-fits-all decisions that are all too often made in Washington, D.C. In the 21st century, the service will embrace a data-driven approach to tailor regulatory protections for America's precious natural resources while recognizing the importance of the American people's ability to prosper in the land of the free, said Service Director Brian Nesvik. These revived regulations provide an opportunity for the service and its biologists to cultivate a more cooperative relationship with the American people we serve. Okay, and that was what was released from the U.S. Department of the Interior today. I will make one more comment, and then I'd like to hear your thoughts, Aiden. I had heard this story a few years ago where there was a guy who was a rancher, and he couldn't allow his cattle onto certain property, or I think he owned the property, but the government was not letting him because there was tortoises there, and he's like, well, the tortoises were there before, and they were doing fine. Like, the tortoise numbers did not decrease while my cattle were there because the cattle were acting like the bison used to, and like just tearing up the land, and the turtles can interact with like the soil or something, and so the tortoise population was not impacted by the cattle being there. And he's like, they're just interfering because this particular plot of land has, like, it was some sort of valuable mineral like uranium or whatever. But the tortoises were on the land, and this guy and his family had been keeping cattle on this land for like generations, and it was only just then like the government was stepping in because of the tortoises. And I have heard theories that the Endangered Species Act has been like weaponized against some people, but I'm very cautious when it comes to stuff like this. Partially because I don't want the fear-mongering, but also partially because I don't want to have species go extinct that my children will never get to see and I'll never get to see because I haven't seen them yet. So anyways, your take.
I don't know. I'm fairly neutral, I would say, on this matter. Like, I do agree with you. It would be nice to see those animals again, but yet at the same time, I also understand that we need to have more land for productivity.
I don't think we need...
Since we are sitting on a debt bubble.
I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is, like, they need land. There's, like, we have a lot of arable land. We have more arable land per capita than I think any other country on the planet. So in terms of, like, growing crops, we got plenty of land, and I'm worried that a lot of these, like the data centers and the drilling, I'm worried that's going to actually damage our ability to go ahead and basically use that arable land where we can farm. I don't, like, I'm definitely, like, there's got to be a better way if you're going to make a species go extinct, which I don't think that's going to happen here. I don't think species are going to go extinct because of this change to the Endangered Species Act regulation reform. I think what's going to happen is, like, we're going to have to look for other solutions, but I don't think any animals are actually going to go extinct. Now, populations will probably be squeezed, which is not good. And then people who live in local areas who enjoy the wildlife already are going to, like, see a change in their wildlife, probably for the worst. And so that is something that's also concerning, is that the people who enjoy their livelihoods, it's their livelihoods, but the way that, you know, how that wildlife interacts with them, that's going to be impacted. I'm sure people are going to be upset by that. Just like when I read, now I will say this is something that was also a bit of fear-mongering when I read that they were worried that fireflies would go extinct, and I'm like, they're not going to go extinct. I know people are trying to make that statement, but living where the fireflies live, I highly doubt they're going to go extinct. With that being said, I would hate to see them go extinct. I love having them around, but I don't think they're going to go extinct. So now I want to talk about the data centers, because there has been controversy around the data centers. And another thing that appears to be a myth is some people said that Trump was going to tax the common people for data centers, but based off of what I was reading earlier, that's not true either. The last part was what we just discussed, the changes to the Endangered Species Act. That was like a half-truth. What the media has been projecting is half true. Like they're telling you basically the worst possible outcome because of the amendments. But they're not telling you the full story. Now, when it comes to the data centers, based off of everything I've seen on social media, they've been lying about that. At least when it comes to being taxed on it, because it sounds like what's happening right now is that the tax centers are getting the data centers are getting a tax break, but the Americans are not. So basically, the Americans are footing the bill. And I read somewhere in social media that Trump said we were going to have to foot the bill with an extra tax. I couldn't find anything to support that. That sounds like that's complete BS. So I'm going to read a few things on the data centers. This is from the Texas Tribune, and so I'm invested. Texas is giving data centers more than $1 billion in tax breaks each year. The tax break is one of the state's costliest incentive programs, and soon to be the most expensive of its kind in the nation. A picture of them just developing a data center. Now, this is not like in this particular picture. It doesn't look like it's going to be a big data center. I know a lot of people talk about like how big these data centers are going to be, like several square miles or whatever. This one looks like at most it's only a couple of acres, maybe 3, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a huge data center. But all the same, let's get into it. This story was supported by the Pulitzer Center. Texas will lose out on $3.2 billion in tax and sales tax revenue over the next 2 years, thanks to an exemption for the state's booming data center industry, according to the Comptroller's office. That figure is likely a vast underestimate given to the explosion of new facilities being built, but already makes the tax break one of the state's costliest incentive programs and soon to be the most expensive of its kind in the nation. Lawmakers who will meet in January for the next legislative session say they are considering proposals to either limit the scope of the tax break or get rid of it altogether. These new numbers are extremely concerning, and I will say they're unsustainable, said State Senator Joan Huffman, chair of the Senate Committee on Finance, in an interview with the Texas Tribune. I plan to look at it, filing legislation to either appeal the exemption or take a very close look at it and see. Lawmakers approved the tax break more than a decade ago. Wow. Okay, so before I could vote, when data centers were smaller and required fewer resources, okay, that changes the stories. If they are passing laws when they had no idea how much resources were going to be required, they probably didn't have a clue how much things were going to change within a decade. Which, if you would talk to any data scientists, any computer scientists over a decade ago and ask them, like, how is this going to change? You're going to be like, a lot. Like, a lot of the technology is going to change in 10 years. So from 2014 to 2022, the exemption amounted to between $5 million and $30 million in lost state revenue per year. By 2023, that skyrocketed to more than $150 million. Whew, okay. And this year, Texas is foregoing at least $1.3 billion, a number that is rapidly increasing every year based on state projections. There's a graph. Holy smokes. They're going up to 1.7. They're projecting by 2030 it could be 1.75 billion. The money Texas is poised to lose from the tax break on a yearly basis could pay for the entirety of the state's new school voucher program, or it could double the size of a state disaster fund to help local communities like Kerr County prevent flooding. It's also quickly outpacing the cost of Texas' highly controversial Chapter 313 tax abatement program, which allowed manufacturing companies to avoid paying local school property taxes, drawing the ire of lawmakers who eventually shut down the program last year at its height of more than $1 billion a year. And the growth in data centers was unforeseen just 3 years ago when the Comptroller's Office projected the tax break would be valued at about $180 million in the 2027 to 2028 biennial budget. In 2025, the projection was revised upward to more than $3 billion, a reflection of the artificial intelligence boom that took off after 2023 and requires massive amounts of computing power. Texas already has more than 300 operating data centers, with more than 100 additional projects planned or under development. At least 142 are under construction, leading the nation and beating out Virginia, which has 141 under construction, according to an analysis by data firm Atrio. By fiscal year 2030, the Comptroller's Office forecasts the annual value of the tax break will be nearly $1.8 billion, a $500 million increase from the current fiscal year, according to the 2025 report. Data center industry leaders warn that shrinking or ending the tax break could spell an end to Texas' rising status as the nation's number one destination for data centers. A status the industry argues comes with new jobs and billions of dollars in local investment. I think the holistic message that sends would give a lot of different companies pause about the state of being able to invest in Texas for the long term is, said Dan Dorio, Vice President of the State Policy with the Data Center Coalition, a trade group that represents major tech companies. Meanwhile, data centers are becoming increasingly unpopular among locals. Yeah, because it's destroying the water supply. They're very loud. They're very hectic. And they're disrupting wildlife, and they're causing a lot of problems. Cities like San Marcos, Amarillo, College Station, Waco, and Harlingen have seen grassroots movements pressuring local officials to block data center projects. A recent Quinnipiac poll found 65% of Americans oppose the construction of a data center in their community. Texas is one of 37 states offering tax exemptions for data centers, most of which are sales tax exemptions tied to local economic growth requirements. States like Virginia, Illinois, Michigan, Arizona, and Georgia are also debating whether to curtail or significantly alter those tax breaks. The tech industry argues that tax breaks are crucial to maintain the industry's investment in the state, which creates jobs and generates local tax revenue. Critics say the industry is choosing Texas for its abundance of cheap land and electricity as much as any tax break. Dick Levine, a former fiscal analyst for left-leaning policy group Every Texan, said there are many reasons why a company decides to build a particular area, and taxes is far from the most important. Somebody's giving out money. The companies want to be in line, but it's not really how decisions are made, especially when there's bedrock things like land and energy that are much more important than their tax rate, Levine added. There are currently 121 data centers receiving the tax break, according to a Comptroller's Office database. A records request seeking individual tax break data for the facilities was rejected by the Comptroller's Office, citing state law that shields that competitive business information. Qualifying data centers are exempted from paying the state's 6.2% sales tax, taxes on purchases related to building and maintaining a facility, including servers and other data storage hardware, software, office equipment, the cooling system, emergency generators, and plumbing. Alright, I'm going to take a quick break, Aiden. Tell me this. Tell me what you think. I know one of the arguments is that if we put taxes on them, we lose businesses, we lose jobs, and then we have to pay more in terms of like how much we're paying for the data, which makes no sense to me because honestly, I don't know how this relates back to us directly. Because I don't know how exactly the data centers work in terms of like how they play into the economy and Wi-Fi or like, you know, storing data and whatnot. And a lot of people are like, yeah, these are going to be used to spy on you. Houston has already had flock cameras get destroyed because people don't want the government spying on them. And we're seeing the same thing going on in Europe, or at least that's what I'm reading about. Could have been fake, to be honest. I'm gonna let everyone know. Earlier this week, I was just scrolling through Instagram, saw a post about an elephant. Look a little closer. This elephant had 7 legs. It was a septiphont. This elephant had 7 legs. And the whole comment section was like, we love you, we will stop and give you a like, you're so adorable, keep going. And I just type in, no one noticed that the elephant had 7 legs. Nobody noticed. So AI is getting, I wonder what percentage of, it's like I was saying with the Endangered Species Act, is like that one, you know, it's just a headline. People will read a headline and they'll get the wrong information. Like, there's truth in the headlines that I've been reading. But it's fear-mongering. Like, they're giving you the worst possible outcome. I don't think that the Endangered Species Act thing is as bad as they're making it out to be. It still sounds pretty bad based off of what I just read. But now I'm here and I'm like, I don't know where the truth is on this, where it's like, I don't know what the data centers provide to the economy. I really don't. So, Aiden, the question is like, is the benefit of getting rid of the tax rate worth it? Are we the ones really paying out through our own taxes? Are our taxes that, like, when I pay my taxes, is that going towards the data centers? Is that covering for their tax break? What the heck is going on with, like, you know, who's really paying? And if we were to actually tax the data centers, will it disincentivize them? Will we lose jobs? Will we end up paying more some other way? What do you think that this could potentially have any real impact on the economy, I guess is what I'm trying to say, like in terms of like taxing them or not?
I wish I knew more enough to say ethics or not. I don't know. I'm outclassed here.
You probably benefit more from data centers than I do because you play a lot of these games that are like in the...
That is true, yeah, online video games and stuff like that.
Yeah, so that would be stuff that actually relies on data centers to some extent, I can imagine. I'm not a tech person.
I feel like most companies have their own... Well, granted, no, that's a server. Server centers are different from data centers. I feel like, I don't know, like I might be wrong about this. Like I said, I'm gonna probably sound like an idiot no matter what I say, but if I have to put my 2 cents on it, is maybe it'll make your phone go faster when you're just using your mobile data.
I don't know, like it's...
And
that's I think that's more of like, towers, cell towers, than anything else. I don't think there's anything to do with data centers. So the whole thing, like I'm very much based off of everything. I'm like, I don't know why we need these data centers. It seems to me like we were doing just fine without them before. So, that's something that's bothered me is like, why are we creating all these data centers? Like that question's never been answered. No one has ever been able to explain to me why we need so many data centers. And I don't think we're going to find out today. I got 2 more articles that I popped up on this, and then I still want to get to the Jeffrey Epstein files, because something else I saw on Instagram. I'm like, whoa, we haven't covered any of these crazy names yet, and I didn't even know some of these people existed. So we gotta at least look at a few. We gotta go down the rabbit hole just for a minute. Let me see. This is a pretty lengthy article. I'll just link it if anyone wants to read it. I'm very, it's just going back and forth with whether or not this is a good idea. I am going to, okay, this is from comptroller.texas.gov. Data processing services are taxable. Data processing is a service performed with a computer using the customer's data. Entering, storing, manipulating, or retrieving a customer's data is taxable. But merely using the computer as a tool to help perform a professional service is not taxable. Taxable services. We prepared a partial list of taxable data processing services. This will give you an idea of the type of service that is taxable when performed using a computer. If you provide a different service for a client and are not sure if it's taxable, give us a call on a toll-free number listed in this bulletin. Examples of taxable services are accounts payable, accounts receiving billing, check preparation, computer-aided drafting when the client provides specifications, data conservation services, editing client's data, entering client's data, total sator services. I've never seen that word before. Internet service, internet services, creating web homepage and providing server space, formatting client's data storage, manipulating client's data, preparing W-2 forms, payroll tax returns, and payroll checks. Producing reports from client's data, transcription services, word processing services, compiling and producing records, scanning documents. Non-taxable services. When you provide a professional service such as engineering or bookkeeping and use a computer as a tool to complete that service, your charges are not taxable. For example, when you use a computer to prepare a federal income tax return, the charge to your client is not taxable because you are using your knowledge of accounting principles and tax laws to prepare the return. Or when you use a computer to analyze faults in a structure, the service is not a data processing service. The computer is merely a tool you use to provide an engineering service. So then it gives you a list of all like the non-taxable services. And so this is really more for people who are creating like basically e-services, and you need to know what's taxable and what's not. And so it's like, well, I'm not providing any of these e-services, so I'm not doing anything that's taxable. So, this is from whitehouse.gov. Dang. I feel like my body is subconsciously trying to get me to change nationalities. Whitehouse.gov. America's continued economic and technological leadership depends on reliable, large-scale data center infrastructure built here at home. Data center infrastructure is the foundation of the internet, cloud, and computing, and artificial intelligence, AI, and supports our economic and national security. As that infrastructure grows and the related electricity demand increases, the American people should not be footing the bill for the benefit of private companies. Instead, the data center boom should be leveraged to address affordability and benefit all American households and businesses. President Trump is calling on the leading United States hyperscalers and AI companies to build, bring, or buy all of the energy needed for building and operating data centers, paying the full cost of their energy and infrastructure no matter what. Yeah, I was reading that apparently Trump believes that they should foot the entirety of the bill. We shouldn't be paying for these data centers in any way, shape, or form. They should be paying their taxes, is what I had been reading, at least in the AI summaries. As part of the Ratepayer Protection Pledge, companies agreed to protect American consumers from price hikes due to data center energy and infrastructure requirements and lower electricity costs for consumers in the long term, including by bringing, or buying new power supply. I'm going to skip over the what and the why. 2, paying for new power delivery infrastructure upgrades. 3, paying whether they use the power or not. 4, investing in local job creation and workforce development. 5, contributing to electric and community resilience. So I don't like the data centers being built because of the environmental and health impacts that they have on people. Like I think you've seen probably the footage going around of a lady who lives near a data center. She turns on the water. There's no water pressure, and all the water's garbage. It looks like poo water. So that's my concern. Is that's gonna happen, where we live. Especially if they're building them everywhere, and we got literal hundreds of these freaking data centers popping up all over the place. So it's we're already very wasteful for water as it is. Why are we building these data centers when we don't even have that problem under control? Why are we building these data centers when we don't seem to really need them? I think most people will be happier banning AI than they would be building up these data centers. So I think there is nefarious intent behind this. I feel less confident about these data centers being built than I actually do about the Endangered Species Act being amended. Because part of it, what I was reading, is part of that was just repealing what the Biden administration did, and it didn't seem to have any major impact while Biden was in office. Whereas with this is something pretty new, much more relevant, and much more impactful. In fact, in many ways, this is it sounds like a lot of these data centers were actually in direct violation of the Endangered Species Act before the amendment was made. I could be wrong on that, but based on what the stories I've been hearing, it sounds like they've been doing damage to the local environment, and so they were having this negative impact, and it didn't seem like the Endangered Species Act was having any impact on whether or not, the endangered species being impacted were actually protected from the data centers. Although I haven't read anything that, where they did an actual scientific study and were able to verify that, and that can be hard to do, given, you have one major disaster and boom, half a population of the species are gone, but you may not be able to have the time or the resources to get a team together and actually survey the damage. So, any further thoughts before we actually go into the Epstein files, the crowning glory of this channel? Or should I say the crowning shame of this channel?
I think, but I also dislike data centers. I don't know. I got nothing there too, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But yeah. stuff. That is...
Alright.
I think it can do good, but I don't think it's gonna do good today.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so...
That, and, let's see, this is kind of a side tangent here, but...
Go for it.
What is it? It's like the top leading scientists in that field say that, the percentage of an AI taking over the world or inadvertently driving humanity into extinction is 5 to 25%, so not great odds. Like,
yeah, I would rather it be
low,
below.
but it's like it's a little too high anyway.
I wouldn't be happy if it was, 0.1%. I want it lower than that.
Yeah.
Especially if it picks up our habits, man. Like, if this artificial intelligence, picks up the worst habits in humanity, what then?
Mm-hmm.
So, I had this thing show up in my Instagram feed where the guy was like, people who were, illegally redacted from the Epstein files. I don't know what he necessarily meant by that, other than he was unredacting their photos, and I can imagine a lot of those photos that he unredacted were public anyways. As we have seen, one case was the famous case of the Michael Jackson photos that were supposedly released in the Epstein files. They were public photos. I think with the exception of the one where Michael's touring Jeffrey Epstein's property, I think they were all public photos beforehand. And in fact, a lot of fans actually recognized the photos, and they're like, well, I know who those people who have their faces redacted are. Those are his kids. That's Diana Ross's son. And so they were able to figure out who these people were in the pictures, and it wasn't they were just putting blackout squares over anyone, even if they knew who they were. And so in the case of Jack Lang, one guy was going through pictures and showing who he was. So this list that they brought up, I'm not gonna do the Harvard staff. I do know about the Harvard staff being the Jeffrey Epstein files, but I want specific names, and I don't have specific names right off the top of what I've been reading, top of my head. But here's what I got from this one guy's Instagram reel that I'd be interested in looking into. Jack Lang, Minister of Culture of France. Mohmmed bin Salman Al Saud, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. Woody Allen, I'm not going to do either, because I think we've already done them. Second, I know if we haven't done them, we have read documents with him in it. Noah Chomsky, I might be interested. I know, there's also Marilyn Manson with Rose McGowan, and then Joi Ito. So I want to get at least through Jack Lang, Mohmmed bin Salman Al Saud, and Joi Ito. Especially Mohmmed bin Salman Al Saud, because he is apparently supposed to be the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. Oh, they have a lot of people that could just take the throne instead of him, so I'm pretty sure he's probably not going to be Sultan. He's probably not going to have the power. So Jack Lang, 688 results, which is never promising. I've noticed that once you have over 500 results, it's not a promising look. People who generally have under 500 results, there's still a shred of well, maybe you're there for something else. But typically I've seen I haven't seen a whole lot of people where it's 200 to 500. I've only seen 600 plus or less than 200. I haven't seen a whole lot in between. So this is from Jack Lang to Jeffrey Epstein back in 2017. So after Jeffrey Epstein has been tried and convicted as a sex offender. Dear Jeffrey, Jack Lang asks if the flight is already registered in the airport of Marrakech. Have you got some precisions of the place that it will land in the airport of Marrakech? Thank you very much, Fabrice. So Jack Lang looks very suspicious in terms of he's hanging out with this convicted sex offender, and they are planning on going somewhere. A lot of these look like they're from 2017. A lot of them are about flying out to Marrakech. He's got 688 files. I don't know if I want to go too far into it. I'm going to consider having a separate episode about him, but I want to get on to Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud. By the way, we're going down the rabbit hole.
Alright, down the rabbit hole.
Down the rabbit hole! Here we go. Alright. Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud does not pop up underneath that name. Now, if I get rid of the Al Saud, I wonder what pops up. Nope. Mohammed bin Salman, nothing. So he might have actually been redacted. This guy...
I'm kind of shocked that Epstein didn't have pet names for everybody who he was really close to on the island.
Maybe he did. Like, we don't still know all the details. Maybe he did.
Fair point. Because, we don't know what we're looking for, but who's to say what's what?
So when I put in Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, I got only 14 results. Considering that this guy was supposedly redacted in his pictures, I'm very suspicious of this. This is very... I'm wondering if he got, like, the Oprah treatment, where it looks like, they redacted her name everywhere. To Jeffrey Epstein from Eva Dubin. The subject is forward, urgent. No, please send. We have already booked 5 flights, including 2 BBJs. I had Jeffrey's pilot email, but can't find TKS, DCB. David, I just spoke to Jeffrey, and his big plane is available. Do have his email. Greetings, Brenda. No worries. We will be in touch again shortly after return flights from Jeddah back to the USA, which will probably take place on or about 23rd of June. Kind regards, David. I'm reading them backwards. Okay, so this is where he's actually mentioned. Greetings, Brenda. This is David Bernstein, friend of Glenn and Eva. I don't know why I'm going with this accent, but I will. I just wanted to see, perchance, if your Global Express is available for an urgent pop-up trip. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia died last night, and we are arranging many flights to Jeddah this weekend for the royal family to return to Saudi. Please advise if you assist. Many thanks, David. So, he died. The first Crown Prince died. Now we got the second Crown Prince. So they're going in. I wonder if there's I have a weird feeling that there's more to this story that we're not getting. I want to see what happens when I open another one. Okay, it's just the same mention of him dying last night. Died last night. I need to read. I just need to read a little more closely sometimes. Died last night. So, he dies. The first Crown Prince dies. Ooh. There's one more about an engagement. They're talking to... hi, Kevin. Regarding desired outcomes, EY has been engaged by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia to help the Saudi government develop 2 ultra-luxury islands off the coast of the Red Sea. The target demo is similar to that of the Core Club, global citizens with 30 million to 1 billion in assets. The goal is to imagine, design, and develop experience unlike anything that's ever existed. Our client's project lead is in New York, and we feel it could be valuable for him to meet and exchange ideas with with you about target audience, how to serve them, how to differentiate an increasingly competitive market, etc. And by the way, that was from Sam Bastian. And so that's the only mention. So I'm wondering which came first. So this is a different crown prince. Because the crown prince died back in 2017, according to the documents we were just reading. This one about them developing islands was in 2018. So that could be the connection to this Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud. Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia in 2011. 2 men served as the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia in 2011. Prince Sultan bin Abdul Aziz, who held the position until his death in October, and Prince Naref bin Abdulaziz, who succeeded him for the remainder of the year. But I was just reading that in 2012 that the Crown Prince died, so I wonder if there was another death in 2012. Yeah, once again, 2 more people died. Another guy died. Yeah, so in 2012, Prince Naif bin Abdulaziz Al Saud until his death in June, and Prince Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. So that's the guy, the second guy, the guy who succeeded him. Sounds like that is the guy who is currently the Crown Prince, or at least was when he was hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein when that picture was taken. And it sounds like he is still the main guy today. I know they get different. No. I took off numbers lock. Nope, okay, never mind. This guy. Nope, the guy who is currently Mohammed bin Salman. Nah, he's a... Okay, I got... So, Prince Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud is not the same guy as Mohammed bin Salman. Now Mohammed bin Salman is the Crown Prince. And he's been the Crown Prince since 2017. Okay, Aiden, riddle me this. Why were there so many deaths up until this guy became Crown Prince?
Well,
Also,
I guess my first guess would be,
also, wait, really?
what does succession look like in the Middle East?
I'm not entirely sure, but that's the weird thing though is like there were 2 guys in 2011 because one died, another succeeded him. Then that guy dies in 2012, and another guy succeeds him. So that's 3 dudes in 2 years who are the Crown Prince. And then this guy comes along in 2017, and he's buddies with Jeffrey Epstein. He's the one who's trying to create the island off of the coast in 2018. You see the correlations I'm trying to make here? Like, he's definitely doing something with Epstein. Like this is shady. These are shady moves.
Yeah, I can see to that.
I don't have anything to say like, oh, he definitely got, like, you know, his brothers or his cousins, whoever they were in succession, whoever they were killed. But that is from going from 2011 to 2026. That's a very short period of time for a lot of people to die. Like, that was at least 3 people I would have to go through. This is not something that concerns me enough for me to want to do a deep dive into it, but it is interesting. I might It's not. It doesn't concern us in any meaningful capacity, but it is interesting enough where I am considering doing a deep dive just to see how far this rabbit hole goes.
Well, I do think that it's more of creating a conspiracy rabbit hole.
Yeah, but then
it doesn't affect us, but it might help the people over there.
Yeah, it might help them, but that's just like hours of my time that I don't know. With all the stuff that I would be interested in doing deep dives in with the Epstein files, and I'm just doing right now a preliminary look at the Epstein files to see what's in there. This is probably not even at the top of my list of like 10 things. Like, we're still trying to go through like everyone who voted against who voted in favor of the slush funds being released in order to get people to be quiet. Yeah, the guys who are trying to get the hush money out. And it looks like they succeeded. And speaking of hush money, guys, my understanding of hush money is the reason why it's called hush money is like once you get it, you kind of like signed an NDA, and you can't break that NDA once you get the money, unless you're called to testify or something. I don't know the entire extent of it. The legal court proceedings in the United States are insanely confusing, and it doesn't help that the law changes all the time. Perfect example, the Endangered Species Amendment just changed how we are going about protecting endangered species in this country. So everything's very confusing when it goes to the legal system. Everything about the Epstein files is very confusing, and there's probably like 1,000,001 rabbit holes to be explored when it comes to how Epstein influenced the elites. Now, at the bare minimum, we know for certain that Epstein was talking to Mohmmed bin Salman, and they were discussing building some islands to appeal to the elite, to make money off of them. And it does look like he was in pictures with Epstein. Now, what they were doing together beyond that is hard to say, but I do think it's weird that Epstein has got these alleged ties to like secret societies where they think that they can just like off people whenever it's convenient for them. This is one of the more interesting things that I've been reading about. Now, could it be simple, honest explanation? Sure. Maybe there's just poor health in the family and a bunch of them just died off all at once. But to have this guy show up, and he's been around for 9 years as the crown prince, whereas his relatives couldn't even make a year, or barely made a year, or something like that. That's interesting to me. I'd be very interested in seeing if that was just all coincidence, or if there's something more going on. So, last guy, Joi Ito. I don't want to look into these other guys right now. Marilyn Manson, he's already in deep water, hot water for stuff he did in his past. He might already be in prison, I forget. Wow, okay, this Joi Ito guy. He pops up 8,203 times. That's a lot. Like, I don't even know... What the heck did you do, man, to get mentioned that often? It looks like they're texting each other. I don't know who he's texting, though. Because it's just a number. It's just a phone number. Wait a minute. Okay, whoever's messaging him is like on island. Whoever's messaging Joi Ito, he's like, I'm on. He's telling them that he's on the island until Wednesday. Joi Ito this is in response to Joi Ito asking, wondering if I could have some time with you around 11 tomorrow in New York. Have a cool idea slash startup, very apropos to the stuff we've been talking about. Okay. So he says they're going to email to coordinate. I think Joi Ito has 8,000 for a reason. I want to open up at least one more, see if anything different pops up, because that was just text messages and it wasn't too interesting. Also, okay, it's We're talking politics around the 2020 elections. This is.
I feel like we cover one thing and another thing takes its place. I was just reminded there was a panic that they were removing Epstein files. For the thing about that was, it's like, well, yeah, they also have a lot of duplicates, so are they actually removing files, or are they just removing the extras? Like, it's not good that they're removing them at all, but at the same time, it's like, there's still a lot of, what would it be called? Duplicates where it's not exactly unwarranted if they're actually clarifying things, but if they're redacting, then that's no good. Or, I guess, worse than redacting, destroying.
We're never gonna know the full extent of what went on. But
not at this rate, no.
But okay, the guy he's messaging is Jeffrey Epstein, because he's telling him happy birthday. I just looked up Jeffrey Epstein. His birthday is on January 20th, and this guy is messaging Jeffrey Epstein happy birthday, and Jeffrey Epstein is thanks. This is right before lunchtime. So he is messaging Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the number is redacted, so I don't know if this is the same guy from the other conversation. I am going on a limb here, and I'm going to guess it is. So, yeah, this is Jeffrey Epstein messaging this guy. I highly doubt it would be anyone else. So I'm looking to see if there's anything condemning. And I'm also getting kind of tired of talking. We went through a lot. We went through the news. We went through more relevant stuff in politics. We looked into people who, most people probably wouldn't think too hard to look into.
Yeah.
I would like to
since this is kind of also a quick news thing, but JD Vance did
I know! I haven't watched it yet. I've seen clips.
Yeah,
I'm upset.
I've seen people review it, but I haven't seen the original. 2 cents on the matter is, yeah, of course, DJ Vance, the vice president, is going to be running defense for Trump. That's the whole entire job.
Well, there's no way. Yeah,
good.
You don't have anything else to do when you're the vice president. Your whole point of being vice president is to make the president look good. Like, you got nothing else to do. Compared to the president, the vice president does practically nothing. So, it's just like, why? You're just you're there as a backup and to apparently break any ties at the households in Congress. Yeah, this was fun. I am thinking in the future. We have been recording for a while, so I just want to wrap it up. But in the future, maybe take a look and see what the Epstein files have to say about data centers.
Yeah, definitely.
And maybe even the environmental the Endangered Species Act. So, what were your takeaways? Did you learn anything today, Aiden?
Let's see. I guess the main takeaway is do your research. Always make sure to understand what's going on in the background in politics. Don't join the mob one way or the other. Make sure that, you double check what's going on, and maybe you'll agree with it, maybe you'll disagree with it, maybe your anger is justified, maybe you, I don't know, are indifferent.
Yeah. Well, today I learned that Joi Ito was texting Jeffrey Epstein, has over 8,000 files in there. By the way, Joi Ito, I'm not entirely I'm trying to remember what he does again.
Also, another thing that I guess this is not necessarily knowledge, but now I'm slightly interested in, but the conspiracies for other countries.
Well, that's part of the Saudi Arabia thing.
Yep.
The Japanese, so Joi Ito is a Japanese entrepreneur and venture capitalist. Yeah, and something that I learned, there was, oh no, I gotta look up one more guy, my guy. There's this,
all right.
I have to look this guy up. Role Model. Role Model was also an Instagram and a reel, and this is why I want to look him up. He claims that he wants to be a single dad and have a daughter. And everyone's like, well, why the heck would you say something so weird? Like, who wants to be a single parent by choice? Like, it's one thing if you are a single parent after you become a parent and you realize, like, maybe your significant other isn't cut out to be a parent themselves, or maybe you have your differences, or it's, maybe you get pregnant and, you just become a single parent or whatever. So some people just become single parents. It's one thing to want to become a parent after having the kid. I don't think people plan to be single parents, because that is just such a nightmare for most people. Like, you just look at it and you're like, why would I want this? So this guy, and I don't know if we're gonna be able to find him with the name Role Model. So I'm gonna see what his actual name is. Well, what's your original name? So yeah, he comes up. Role Model singer, Wikipedia. His original name is Tucker Harrington Pillsbury. Oh, check it out, the Pillsbury Doughboy. He was born in 97, so he is not that old. He would have been very young when Epstein died. He would have been 22. I want to see, though, if he is in there. I'm not gonna try to look him up for look up Role Model, because that's gonna be in there for other things, and it's probably not gonna be him. Tucker Pillsbury. Okay, nothing popped up. Tucker Harrington. Okay, I'm just gonna see what happens if I put in Role Model. I'm not gonna. Only 119 results, and none of them look like it's about the guy. So, I'm not going to worry about it. For now. I'm not going to worry about it. But yeah, apparently maybe it was fake. I don't know what to believe anymore. They got the thing about the Endangered Species Act. They totally fear-mongered. They did not properly explain that. They totally lied about Trump saying that we're going to get taxed. I'm not trying to save face for Trump, by the way. We already got J.D. Vance doing that. I'm not trying to save face. I'm just trying to tell the truth. But I think we got a lot of fear-mongering going on in the news, where it's totally false information and easily dismiss information. I got the best sources available to disprove it and talk about it. And then you got Joi Ito and all these other guys talking to Jeffrey Epstein. Joi Ito and that Crown Prince guy definitely would be worth more of a deep dive into. But there's already like 1,000,001 things. Like the currently over 3.5 million Jeffrey Epstein files are out. Granted, a lot of them are duplicates, but regardless, that is a lot of files to go through. And we could literally do this for the rest of our lives, and we won't even scratch the surface. That is how many files there are. And because at the rate I'm going through maybe, I want to say at most we will do like maybe 10, 5 to 10 every week. There's no way we can get through 3.5 million over the course of the rest of our lives. I'd have to do the math, but I don't think there's a shot of us being able to do that. I am skipping over a lot of them. And then I'm skimming through some of them, especially if they have a lot of redacted or it doesn't look like it's important information, or at least relevant at the moment. You never know when some information could be useful later. But yeah, for now, I'm gonna wrap this up. All right, everyone, goodbye.